Most of the fight scenes that you see online are extremely bland, even if the choreography is amazing. In this video, I'm going to show you why and reveal what you should be focused on before you design your next fight scene. So you click on a video and you got two guys that show up and face off Western style in a park or in the woods. I'm not sure why we always choose those locations, but we do. You see some cool, slow cinematic establishing shots before they mean mug each other for a few more seconds. And then they're off to the races and we're into the fight scene. The choreography is creative, it's captured well, the moves are clean. We've seen this before a million times. And if we're lucky, the audience gets 40 to 50 seconds into this thing, but even if the choreography is fantastic, they end up scrolling right past it. And in doing so, scroll past all the time and the effort that went into this thing in the first place. And it sucks. So why does this happen? What could you possibly want more than two dudes doing crazy martial arts and beating the shit out of each other? Well, it's one word: context. So the majority of these fights are exactly the same. And by that, I mean, there's no story involved. There's no characters. We just cut straight into that setup that I mentioned before. And we're just watching two dudes moving on camera. And a fight without context is exactly that. It's just movement. It's martial arts. And the problem is that the only people that care about martial arts are other martial arts nerds, which is great if you're trying to design a fight for your friends or for other people that are into martial arts, but not so great if you're trying to design your fights so that the audience, the mass audience, will appreciate them. And if you're creating your fight scenes to appeal to mass audiences and not just other fight nerds, like I hope you are, then you have to realize that mass audiences don't attach themselves to martial arts. They attach themselves to stories and they attach themselves to characters. And that's why the all-action fights that do work online are almost always fan films, because we don't need that context. It's already built in. There's no setup required. We instantly understand who the characters are. We instantly understand what's at stake. When Batman fights Joker, we already know what that relationship is. And if we're fans, we've already invested in that a long time ago. And at this point, the choreography can almost be anything, because the story is doing half the work before the first punch is even thrown. And what you can learn from this is that most creators are copying from the fights they love. Sure, that's fine. That's how you learn. You copy or imitate what you like, you put your own sauce on it, and you create something new. But the problem is they copy the moves, but they don't copy the narrative foundation, which is infinitely more important to understand if you're gonna learn how to create fights that connect to an audience. And the same way that you can focus on getting better at structuring and choreographing fight scenes, you can apply focus to understanding why the narrative elements of Batman, especially the rivalry with Joker, works from a narrative level, and apply that to your fight scene. Because starting with the narrative and story instead of just moves changes a fight from being something that people scroll past to something that people remember and that they share. So what's the solution? Well, it's super simple. You want to approach your fight scene the same way that a director or an actor would approach their scenes. You ask yourself questions like, who is this person? And then you make it up. You ask, what do they want? And then you make it up. And you ask, what happens if they lose? And then you use your answers from 1 and 2 to help you make that up. And then you show those things visually. Something that just came to mind while we were talking is that you want to do this for both characters, but you really want to focus on one of those characters. You want to choose a point of view. Another issue and a problem that I see with these fight scenes that don't land is that no one has picked a side. It's both guys doing equally cool things to each other, and we don't really know who to care about. When you choose a point of view, that registers to the audience, and then they know who to root for and who to root against, which is one of the key elements in a good story. And back to story, this can all be understood by simply saying someone who's trying to win versus someone trying to survive is the difference in choreography and telling a story. So the bottom line here is that context is key. And if you don't learn how to apply that context effectively, then you're gonna get stuck in the trap of creating all your fight scenes for other fight nerds. And I hate to break it to you, but other fight nerds ain't gonna give you jobs and they're not gonna pay your bills, but your ability to move an audience will. This is the exact way that I think about and approach all the fights that I design, and it's exactly what I teach inside Fight Lab, which is linked in the description below, so check that out, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.